In 1747, a young mother pulled her newborn baby boy along her favorite nature trail in a little wagon pieced together by her husband. Sarah worked nights at the local cafe and loved being able to forget about the daily stresses of motherhood and the everyday grind. She came up to a pond she had frequented to watch the moonlight glisten off its surface. When she turned back to pick up her child, what she saw could only be described as a mother's worst nightmare. But before we uncover the horrors that unfolded along Serpents Path, take a moment to poke that subscribe button until it bursts rainbows. Without further ado, let's jump into the story. It was 9 p.m. and Sarah was just getting home from another 12-hour shift at Brian's Cafe, the sole 24-hour place to grab a bite to eat for the many travelers that transition through the Crane Coast Commonwealth. In line with her daily routine, she would have stepped through the door. Her husband was there to greet her with a kiss, with their 4-month-old child, Ryan, in his arms. She had been happily married for 2 years to the local miner, Russ Silverman. The two met at her work during one of Ryan's busy seasons with the company. Russ was a daily customer, popping in before his shift and grabbing the same cup of coffee, giving the same greeting day after day. This became such a routine for them both that Sarah began to have his order ready right when he would walk in. All this would change when she was tasked with training a new barista. The extra time it took the trainee to make Russ's coffee gave them an opportunity to actually strike up a small conversation, and within a couple days, Russ asked Sarah out. Normally, on the first dates, there are several awkward moments of trying to give each other verbal exams, seeing if there's a connection or not, but none of that happened. The moment the two had met at the beginning of Serpents Path, the two of them just hit it off. There wasn't a single awkward moment, and they felt as if they had known each other for years. As the two took the sharp bend of the trail, marking the midway point of the winding path, they had already decided that she would spend the night over at his house. After a wonderful night of Netflix and chill, Sarah found herself staying at his place more and more often, even more so than her own, and soon she moved in with him. By the 3rd month of dating, Russ used up a considerable amount of his savings to buy her a wedding ring, and the two were so excited that they ran to the court that very day and got married. Sarah thought her life was perfect until she had given birth to her first child, Ryder. It was a lot of work and stress, but Russ stepped up to make every accommodation he could to ease Sarah's burden. But her fairy tale life would come crashing to a halt on the night of March 7, 1747, when she looked away from Ryder for only a few seconds and then turned back to find the wagon empty. Panicked, she quickly looked around and saw that the nearby woods were still. She scrambled around the surrounding area, calling out and stopping every so often to listen. Sarah didn't understand how this could have happened. She only looked away for mere seconds, and she hadn't heard anything approaching Ryan or crying. This realization had actually made her question how long it had been since she had seen Ryder. She knew she'd given him his favorite binky just a few minutes before, but the empty wagon threw everything into question. 5 minutes passed as Sarah looked around the area before she began the 2-mile mad dash back to town. The entire time she played back every moment she had seen him on their stroll, telling herself she wasn't crazy. Bursting into the security forces facility, it was less than an hour before they had put together a sizable search party looking for little Ryan. Despite the 200+ members of the search party and a still-ranked adventuring party that happened to be passing by with a hunter who possessed a balloon lizard as a companion, the presence of the hunter and his companion had been a big boost to morale, as a primary required skill set to hold for that prestigious hunter classification was tracking. The little balloon lizard was immediately able to point the search party in the general direction, and the hunter had indicated pressure marks on the branches above where Sarah had been, and continued in line with where his companion was pointing. Hope faded though as the trail went cold at a small nearby lake a mile from the path. Their search party had went around the lake, but nothing was found, as all traces, any prints that they came by, halted at the river's edge. It would take a week for a water rescue team to come out to their small city. A week passed, and Sarah's mental health had become Russ's top priority, as Sarah would spend a better part of her entire day walking around the lake and the forest continuing her search. She had stopped showing up for work, quit taking care of the house, and was barely taking care of herself. The young, vibrant girl who had always had a smile that could light up a room now looked years older from the distress and lack of hygiene. The search teams dwindled over the next several days, but 3 days after Ryan had went missing, the town would once again be aroused in the middle of the night by a frantic mother. This time, Lyra Flynn, a middle-aged forest elf, reported her child missing from their sunroom. The security forces searched the residence and found no sign of forced entry. The investigating team now had to consider the possibility of a serial kidnapper, or worse. Yet, once again, over the next 24 hours, they would find no leads. A curse seemed to have suddenly fallen upon the town over the next 2 weeks since Ryder's disappearance. A total of 5 children would go missing. On the same day that the water rescue team arrived, the mayor had officially put in a request to the nearby Adventurers Guild with a reward of 200 gold, which is about the equivalent of $20,000. As the rescue team geared up, over 1,000 people gathered around the lake to witness the event. Sarah stood in the front row along with the other distressed families. Most of them knew they'd probably never see their children alive again, but they had hoped that this presence might somehow make the impossible happen, with the overwhelming support of the community only strengthening this resolve. What the dive team found shocked the Crane Coast community. At the base of the lake was a tunnel that led deep underground into the network. For anyone unfamiliar with the term, the network is a staggeringly large series of interconnected tunnels that are believed to span across the world. Horrific monsters and creatures that would make nightmares seem like sweet dreams dwell down there. With this discovery, the rescue team returned to tell the anxious crowd that they couldn't continue the search due to the dangers that lurked underneath the surface of the lake. With all hope seemingly gone, the town sat on pins and needles, wondering who would be the next victim of the local creature. Mothers would sleep with their children in their arms, and fathers around town would assist security forces in patrolling the streets. 2 months passed and 8 more children went missing when the mayor declared a state of emergency and increased the reward to 1,200 gold, which is about $120,000. With a possible kidnapper being from the network, the guild deemed the request too dangerous for steel-tiered adventurers, which it elevated to gold. But without the minimum reward requirements, that type of quest was taken down. Now that the job was properly funded and back on the board, it wasn't long before somebody had taken up the quest, and that group was Carolina's Bane. The group consisted of 2 warriors, a wizard, a sorcerer, and 2 rogue classifications of varying skill ratings. The group wasted no time when they got to town, heading to the lake in less than an hour after arriving. 5 days passed before the group would emerge from the lake. Willard Forrester, one of the warriors, had been left in critical condition from their encounters down there, while the rest had suffered minor injuries. With them, the rogues dragged the corpse of a large lamia, which is the creature with the lower half of a snake and the torso and head that is more humanoid but mixed with serpent-like features. Turning over their findings, which had included the clothing of each of the missing children, along with several partial skeletons, apparently the lamia had been using the town as a hunting ground to feed it and its dozen offspring. While Sarah and the other parents wept over their lost children, they were thankful that the beast had been killed and no one in the community would have to go through what they did ever again. A tragic story of survival, but now it's time to close the book on the Lakeside Lamia dinner case. If you like this story, check out the Ryder's Pass Killer or Unvek's Haunted Forest video. All these stories are based off my webcomics and manga series inspired by my homebrew D&D campaigns that I ran for over 10 years. You can read them for free by clicking the link in the bio, and let me know what your thoughts are in my fan Discord, where you can win free commissions from my team just by interacting.